All right, let's go deeper.
In 2016, she criticized Hillary for not being woke enough. Quote, "I do wish Hillary wouldn't use the language of boy and girl. It's erasing language for non-binary people." In 2018, she declared that Trump's a racist. And she did it again in 2020. During the Summer of Love, she called all white people racist, and then capped the year off showing how excited she was to vote for Biden. That's who NPR hired as CEO.
The number one challenge here that we see is, of course, the First Amendment in the United States. Is a fairly robust protection of rights, and that is a protection of rights both for platforms, which I actually think is very important, that platforms have those rights to be able to regulate what kind of content they want on their sites. But it also means that it is a little bit tricky to really address some of the real challenges of where does bad information come from and sort of the influence peddlers who have made a real market economy around it. We took a very active approach to disinformation and misinformation coming into not just the last election, but also looking at how we supported our editing community in an unprecedented moment where we were not only dealing with the global pandemic, we were dealing with a novel virus, which by definition means we knew nothing about it in real time. And we're trying to figure it out as the pandemic went along. And so we really set up in response to both the pandemic, but also in response to the upcoming US election and as a model for future elections outside of the US, including a number that are happening this year, we just obviously went through yet another Israeli election. The model was around how do we create sort of a clearinghouse of information that brings the institution of the Wikimedia Foundation with the editing community in order to be able to identify threats early on through conversations with government, of course, as well as other platform operators to understand sort of what the landscape looks like.
The hard things, the places where we are prone to disagreement, say politics and religion. Well, as it turns out, not only does Wikipedia's model work there, it actually works really well. Because in our normal lives, these contentious conversations tend to erupt over disagreement about what the truth actually is. But the people who write these articles, they're not focused on the truth. They're focused on something else, which is the best of what we can know right now. And after 7 years of working with these brilliant folks, I've come to believe that they are onto something, that perhaps for our most tricky disagreements, seeking the truth and seeking to convince others of the truth might not be the right place to start.
You can't be serious, man. You cannot be serious!
In fact, our reverence for the truth might be a distraction that's getting in the way of finding common ground and getting things done. Now, that is not to say that the truth doesn't exist, nor is it to say that the truth isn't important. Clearly, the search for the truth has led us to do great things, to learn great things. But I think if I were to really ask you to think about this, one of the things that we could all acknowledge is that part of the reason we have such glorious chronicles to the human experience in all forms of culture is because we acknowledge there are many different truths. And so in the spirit of that, I'm certain that the truth exists for you and probably for the person sitting next to you. But this may not be the same truth. This is because the truth of the matter is very often, for many people, what happens when we merge facts about the world with our beliefs about the world. So we all have different truths. They're based on things like where we come from, how we were raised, and how other people perceive us.
This is a strange world. I don't know how we got to this.
Senior business editor Uri Berliner published a story in Free Press, Substack. The headline, "I've been at NPR for 25 years. Here's how we lost America's trust." Among his claims, NPR was stacked with like-minded people who appealed to an ever-narrow progressive worldview, catering to a select audience and losing its audience as a result. He also says stories were ignored, mistakes made, corrections never issued, and that it all, quote, shatters trust and engenders cynicism about the media. So for those who are sitting there saying, I knew it, NPR, those laconic lefties, you know, with that slow delivery and just feeding us all of this, are you saying that's the truth, or are you saying it's something that has evolved? What do you want people to feel about NPR and what you feel about the media in general?
I think it's evolved. You know, I've been at NPR a long time, 25 years. You could say I'm a lifer. And it's a place I've always loved working. But when I started, there was a liberal orientation, but I think we were more guided by curiosity, open-mindedness. You know, you talked about policy. We were kind of nerdy and really like to dig into things and understand the complexity of things. That I think that's evolved over the years into a much narrower kind of niche thinking, a group think that's really clustered around a very selective progressive views that don't allow enough air, enough spaciousness to consider all kinds of perspectives.
NPR has suspended a senior editor who publicly criticized the network's liberal bias.
When he dug into voter registration at NPR in Washington, guess what he found? 87 Democrats, not a single Republican.